What is up, everybody? It's the chairman of the United States Department of Nerds, where we are for the people, by the people, and of the people. And on tonight's episode, I got a very special guest. But first, we got to play that very special theme song.
You are listening to the USDN on the DSPN.
It's a trap!
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it and bring on our special guest for tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Nicholas Keaton Casparo. Did I get it?
You had it the first time, yeah.
I had it the first time. All right. So we're going to call him Nick tonight.
Nick is good, yeah. It's nice to see you, man. How are you?
Good to see you, too. I'm good. How's everything going on your side?
It's good. It's good. Busy as hell.
You're in California, right?
Say that again?
You're in California?
No, I'm in Florida.
Oh, what part?
Right now in Bradenton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Down in the southern part.
Yeah.
All right. I spent a lot of time in the Panhandle, so.
Oh, nice. You know what? It's such a big state. I really haven't spent a whole lot of time in the Panhandle. I've been meaning to make a trip up there. I got some friends who really love that area.
You're good, dude.
You get.
I enjoyed it. I really did. I was stationed out there, so I really enjoyed it a lot, and I got to be there with my family, so that was always a good thing. So
always a good thing to be with family. Yeah, it's I got my family downstairs, and we had to give the 2-year-old a bath early today to make sure she wasn't making too much noise next to this room, because right next to my office is the bathroom where we usually, we get her ready for the night, and she can she's almost 2, and she's starting to get real vocal. She's starting to use all
I got a very vocal 2-year-old next door to me, but it's a 4-legged kind, and it's a cat that my daughter just brought home. So yeah,
we've got loud family members.
Hey, we're surrounded by the good people, right?
That's right.
Whether they're furry or not.
That's right. I got a couple of dogs too. I got some furry guys downstairs.
I got 2 downstairs that are chilling, and then right now my daughter's is in quarantine until we can get him to the vet tomorrow. So she brings some strange animals whenever.
Gotta love it.
And she's home for college, so I'm like, you know what? It's yours. You take care of it.
Hey, that's fair though. That's fair.
Yep. But let's dive into it, man. How did you come up with the concept of? I'm hoping I'm going to pronounce this right. It's Vitalerium. Yeah. I'm stuttering tonight. Vitalerium.
Vitalerium.
Vitalerium. All right. I was close.
Most people say it that way the first time. It's a stigma I may be forever working to break. But
hey, we'll get it there. We will get it there.
So yeah, Vitalerium started as a book and then graduated to a comic book series. And I don't plan to stop there. I'm already trying to work on turning it into a short animated film, or at least create a short animated film based on one of the chapters of the book, somewhere between like 8 to 12 minutes long. More for like proof of concept and to give people a little bit of a teaser of what I really plan to do with this series. But I'm describing it as a budding franchise because, like I said, I'm looking to penetrate essentially all outlets of media with Vitalerium. And like I said, I started with the book. I'm approved for 7 now with the publisher.
Oh, nice. So are we talking 7 like full books? Or are we talking the comic books?
Oh yeah, 7 full books. Like
okay.
And that's the novel series. That's what I spend, a good majority of the time on. And then for the comic book series, for instance, the first comic book that I think I sent you, just 1 chapter from the book, of which there are 31 chapters. So
I did start diving into the book the last couple of days. I didn't get very far because I actually got busy at work today. But I was like, when it's not often you see sci-fi books or any books really turned into a comic book. So this was a first for me, and I was really happy to get both. That way I can kind of put them side by side and kind of go, okay, where's the comic book pickup versus the book? And not quite that far into the book when you picked up. Because in the comic book, Roman, your main character, is grown. But in the book, you he's a younger kid, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So he's in the book. I wanted to make a note of or make a point of, I guess, really building out that character and showing how he was built, giving the backstory, going into detail about, what type of scenarios would actually form this kind of hardened freelancer, basically mercenary for hire, that you meet when he's an adult and that you follow for the vast majority of the book. And to be able to create a human like that, or it's going to take a pretty dark story, a pretty dark backstory. I'm not sure how far into it you've gotten so far, but
I got a feeling I'm right there on the cusp of getting into that. So but I don't want to spoil it for myself either. So
I will refrain from giving out any spoilers today, I promise. But yeah, so the comic book, I wanted to follow him starting as an adult, at least in the beginning, because I feel like I chose that chapter because that's literally chapter 6 right from the book.
Okay.
I chose that chapter because it's a good indicator for what's to come in the series. It shows you who he is, what he's about, the world that he's living in, and the types of characters that he's having to deal with. And I felt like it was a good chapter to really bring that to life and give people just a snapshot of what this series is going to be all about.
No, that first book was done very, very well. And I was talking to your artist Francisco a little bit about it. I was like, dude, it very much like the way he did it had like that Borderlands vibe to it. And I was like, it kind of was like, it started out like boom, he's back from a mission, and you could tell he has like this no nonsense type of attitude. He's like, you're gonna pay me, or you're gonna face your consequences of not paying me.
Yeah.
So it was like a big bang, and I like when a book 1 does that big bang and does that big introduction of the character, and then the next book you can kind of mellow him out and see who he really is when he's not this hard cut character.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of different sides of Roman because like I said, the second comic that I have, which actually comes out this coming week.
We were going to get there. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I know it was in production.
It was a production. So I know you talked to Francisco. Big shout out to Francisco Nilo, and who's my illustrator, and my colorist, Chandran Panusamy. Both phenomenally talented. They've been a dream to work with, and I made sure to contract with them for at least the next 5 issues to make sure that I could grab their time, because
yeah, you want to lock them down.
Exactly. And they're, like I said, they've been amazing to work with. It's a very collaborative process between the 3 of us. And we actually just recently planned out the canon for the entire series. So there will be when you're dropped in the first comic, you're basically following Roman as an adult through the storyline that he goes through in the book. Then there's going to be a time before the book where I follow him as an adult before all of this, which is going to allow me to basically send him on lots of different missions and just, explore the world, have him meet different characters so that the reader of the comic book can discover different parts of the world. I can really flesh out some of the world building, some of the interesting elements that you run into on planet Diorum, which is the planet that this entire comic book takes place on. And then I'm going to have a time when he's a teenager, and that's going to be a little bit closer to, when you're first introduced to Roman in the book, the novel.
Okay.
So I also have an opportunity to basically take, because it is a multi-narrative book, so you are following multiple different characters from all walks of life. So once again, my goal was to give everyone a feel for basically how much effort I put into the world building in this, because I designed everything from, the factions that are kind of the big players I
did like the way you did on the book when you as you're, you start to scroll and you do have the different factions, and then you kind of get to like the intro with NASA, which I thought was really cool, because you didn't just throw us into a book. You kind of gave us a little background of the different factions and that kind of stuff. And then we get how we came about this source of power, or energy, I should say. And then we get into who, Roman as a child or a teenager. And I was like, that's how you do it. You kind of lay a simple foundation like that. That way, as you start getting into the actual book, you're not going like, who the hell is this organization? You gave them all that up front. You didn't have to send the reader, through another chapter or skip ahead a few pages to go, oh, that's who they are. So I really enjoyed that aspect of how you started that book.
Yeah, I wanted to give readers and fans and people something that they could really immerse themselves in. And to be able to do that, you need to just be endlessly building. And that's literally what I've been doing for the past 3.5 years, is just continuing to build this whole universe. It's funny. I started basically planning out the universe after I started writing the first book, because the book, that I don't know if you picked up on this, but the whole book was written at 36,000 feet. So in my last position, like my last day job, I was on a plane 3 to 5 days a week. So I was constantly flying. So that's a lot of plane time. You eventually get to a point where you've basically beaten Netflix, and
you got to the end of Netflix.
Exactly. So I was just kind of wasting my time, and I was like, all right, well, what can I do with this? So I had a few ideas that I wanted to try and flesh out. And so I said, you know what, let's give it a shot. So I sat down on a long flight from Miami to Hawaii. And when I got off the plane, I was on before. And I was like, all right, whoa. Like it poured out of me at that point, because that was the first time I'd really written anything other than a professional email in over a decade. So I basically said, all right, well, I'm really enjoying this, but if I want to do it right, I'm going to have to make sure that I am, bringing people into the world. Like I had all these questions about a world that I was writing about And I said, well, all right, well, let's start answering them. So I sat down, I basically opened up an Excel spreadsheet, and I started with the themes I wanted to talk about. And that eventually led me to the factions. Who are the factions that we want to explore? Who are the characters? What's their backstory? What do they represent in the story? All the way to what's the flora and fauna look like on planet Diorum? Let's make a whole like slew of different species that I can basically pull from, be able to use in the book. What does the government structure look like? What do the other planets look like? Because Diorum, where the story takes place, is it's the 7th colonized human planet. So what do those planets look like? How many moons do they have? What language do they speak? What's their government structure like? What are people like there? And I just kept answering all these questions. And I still find, even today, as I'm thinking about and beginning to, get through the second book and think about books 3 through 7, I'm still coming up with questions of things I need to answer. So it's been an absolute blast. I actually usually take like a day a week to just sit down and answer questions that I have about my own world, and just start to, it really gives me an opportunity to kind of flex that creative muscle. So it's a lot of fun.
I can tell you're oozing the passion for your project, and I love it. And shout out to CJ here, says a 7-book deal is amazing. Sending you a big congrats on that. CJ runs Nightmares and Nerdscapes, another podcast here on the DFPN network that I am a part of. Shout out to everybody. Everybody's had a fantastic 2025 right now. So
thank you, CJ.
We touched on it a little bit. If you were going to describe the world that you're building to someone new, how would you describe the world of Vitalerium?
You got it. Yes.
Oh, fuck yeah.
So,
fuck yeah.
I would describe it as it is a gritty, dark, street level view of a cyberpunk dystopian future. And not just the cyberpunk that, it's not just about, bionic limbs and things like that. It's a gritty dystopian future. You're on a planet with an authoritarian government that is now going through some kind of change that you will learn about in the book. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but they're basically beginning to grab even more power and more resources, and it's for a specific reason. So there is an element of mystery about the book as the events begin to kind of unfold what's to come. You get a little bit of everything with this. You get your mystery, you get action, you get tons of action. It's a sci-fi, right?
Dude, it boom, right into it.
Right off the bat. You get elements of hard sci-fi. I take the time to try and explain the technologies in a way that's engaging, and it's not like just reading a textbook. I try and explain a lot of things about the world through the conversations of the characters. You're going to get your conspiracy elements. You get to see how the politicians act when they're kind of in front of the cameras, but then you also get to follow them when they're kind of having their backroom meetings and seeing really what their true intentions are and what the true motives are behind all of the different steps they're taking politically. So you get your political intrigue. You get a little bit of romance. I put the protagonist Roman through hell. I had to give him a little something. There are moments of comedy, but generally speaking, it is not your cozy fireside read. I mean, it is a dark story. It's the idea. I wanted people to feel like they were on the edge of their seat while they're reading this book.
No, I think you accomplished that very well, and that translated very well into the very first comic book, because as soon as you kind of knew, as soon as he pulls up, in front of the I guess it's a bar.
Yep.
You kind of just knew, like, we're about to get some shit go down right here. And sure enough, 2 or 3 pages later, you're like, there it is.
Yeah, and he's not exactly Roman, the protagonist. He's not exactly the ideal employee, so to speak. He's kind of when you first meet him, and if you read the book, you know why. I mean, he's got such a traumatic past that it's scarred him immensely, and he's kind of a lost soul when you first meet him. I mean, he's just in the book, he's basically spending money on booze and whores, just floating through life without any real purpose. So in a way, the story is it's a number of things. It's a conversation about authoritarian governments and how some of the tools that they utilize, like bringing some stuff to light, some of the tools they utilize to basically assert that control and get what they want. It's a story about personal growth and rediscovery of purpose for the protagonist. It's a story about leadership. There are some leadership qualities that are buried pretty deep in Roman, and like I said, he's basically just floating through life trying to reconnect with those, and certain circumstances will basically force those to resurface. And it is a story that has a lot of philosophical themes that are explored. I mean, essentially the whole story arc, you're basically watching the emergence of a future mythological hero. Basically, the person who becomes the most important person in future history from the very ground floor. You get to meet him throughout his traumatic experiences. You get to see what life was like before, just a little snippet of it. You get to see what that turns him into. And then you get to see his path as certain circumstances basically force him into just an entirely new life, an entirely new responsibility.
So you have this book. At what point, or what was it that said, you know what, I'm going to make this into a comic book?
That's a good question.
Was that always the plan?
It wasn't. At one point I was writing this book and I was like, this is cathartic. I don't care if this turns into anything. And then it got to a point where I got a publisher and they were interested in it. And I was like, okay, this is the only thing I care about right now. It was like obviously, other than family and things like that. But aside from family and, just important personal things, this is like the only thing I think about nowadays. So eventually it graduated to a point where I had the first book done. It was in the editing process. And I'm having some beta readers read this and they were like, wow, man, this was a good book. Like, I really hope this gets turned into a movie one day. And I was like, shit, I hope this gets turned into a movie one day too. And then I was how am I going to make that happen? And the first thought that came to my mind was, well, I need a pictorial representation of what's happening in the book. Let's take those words and really bring them to life on a piece of paper. And the next logical step was to turn that into either a comic or a graphic novel. And the comic seemed like a more financially feasible option at the time. And that was the route I went. And now I like that I took that route because it allows me to release things in, like I said, issues, segments. I like the idea of, like, I remember the days of like waiting for like albums to come out on CD, like, and things like, oh, you got to wait for it. Like, there's an anticipation. There's something about that just makes it more fun. It's when you cut out the anticipation portion, it's just not quite the same experience. And I know I'm having a blast doing it. I hope other people are having a blast. with the comic and the book. The feedback has been great so far, which I'm very grateful for. And I'm just trying to keep this train rolling now. I'm just looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, you're nailing it, dude. For me, it was one of those where I got the comic first, and then Eve sent over the book. I was like, perfect. And then as I'm reading through, I'm like, okay, so the comic book, it picks up a little later in the story of the of the book, and I'm like, okay, I like that. And then I just so happened to be talking to Francisco, and he's like, oh yeah, issue 2 is getting ready to hit the press. Is it either through with the press, or is it ready to be distributed?
Issue 2 of the comic book?
Yes.
Issue 2 of the comic book will be ready to be sent out to be pressed.
Okay.
So right now we're just waiting on the final colored pages.
Gotcha.
Throw that into a PDF after we, with the digital art, there's like layers on it.
Yep.
So we remove the text layers so that we can color or the Chandran can color the entire thing.
Uh-huh.
Then we replace those layers. We put it all into a PDF, and then I send it off for print. And typically I release, and this is kind of a new thing because it's a new platform for me, but I just started a Patreon, and I release the digital version of the comic book first on my Patreon.
Okay.
And then I release it on my website and in print form. So I like making sure that the supporters of the Patreon get a little something a little bit earlier, because
you got to take care of the people who take care of you and put the food on the table.
100%.
And it keeps that ball rolling.
Yeah, and it keeps me on task, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not kind of producing content and producing something, it's what am I doing? I'm
watching Star Wars because I'm behind.
What's that?
I said I'm watching Star Wars because I'm behind. Anytime I'm not doing content, I'm catching up. I got to finish Andor.
Yeah, man. See, I'm way far behind right now. The last sci-fi movie I actually saw it in theaters, was Dune 2. Oh no, that's a lie. I saw the new Alien more recently.
Okay.
But other than that, I still have not seen the final episode of Star Wars. Which one is that one? That's not Rogue. That's
Ahsoka. Or we have
I'm talking about like the films.
Oh.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Man, I'm brain farting on that one.
I know, I'm brain farting too, but I still haven't seen it because I've just been.
Oh, are you talking about the Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah.
Okay, the newest trilogy.
The newest one.
My mind immediately goes to like the original and then the second trilogy. Every single time.
No, I've seen those. I just I've been putting so much time into this that I've kind of, I don't know, I've just been out of the loop a little bit, which kind of sucks because I kind of do miss it, but it's also it's so much time that I would need to take to kind of sit down and catch up on all the things that I've wanted to see.
Yeah. So how are you translating the book to the comic book? Like, are you taking the liberties with the comic book to kind of fill in some more gaps with the book? Or are you trying to do a 1-for-1?
1-for-1 is always tough. I would say it's close, but it's definitely an abridged version. Actually, I don't even know if I'd call it an abridged version, because in the book, I take a lot of time to, the descriptive writing, the world building portion. We're basically just relaying that through the images. It's just, it's there. That's more of a discussion between, me and Francisco and Chandran. just to make sure that, you know, it's kind of matching what I'm going for. But as far as the script, it's very it's dialogue heavy, I would say. It's a lot of, you know, dialogue between the characters that are, you know, kind of the main characters. And so I had to cut that down a lot to make sure that, you know, because it would just be a book. Otherwise, it would just be a whole page of text and you wouldn't be able to see the pictures. So
I've seen a few comic books that way, and it was horrible.
yeah, yeah, that's it. It needs to be an enjoyable experience, right? One that flows nicely.
And it really does. Everything melds together really nicely. I read a lot of comic books. I don't know if you can see it, but that's this week's comic books. Granted, it was a huge week. Exquisite Corpses from Tiny Onion and Image come out this week. So James Tynion drops a new book. I'm all over it.
Nice.
So there's a lot of variant covers in there for that one book alone, because I'm like, oh, this artist did a cover. Yeah, I'm going to have to get that. You know, I'm that guy. I'm unashamed by it.
Oh, why would you be? That's fine.
Exactly. I
respect that. I've been, since I've kind of entered the comic book game, I've been trying to step up my game a little bit. And, you know, I'm starting to visit a lot of the indie comic book authors and creators at their booths, you know, whenever I get a second to run away from my booth. Usually when they're helping me, it's either, you know, my wife or my brother. I've got a couple of friends that have helped me in the past as well. It's always good to have a second hand at these big conventions because they can get hectic. And those are also a ton of fun because you get to interact with everyone. But yeah, as far as the comic book, cutting down the dialogue has been the one thing I'd say Francisco has had to like get on me for. Like, hey man, this is a lot of text for this. Like, you want me to fit this into 2 screens? And I'm like, shit, yeah. So I got to figure out how to make it work while still relaying the message and still maintaining the feel of that conversation. I've always loved I love movies with like meaningful dialogue. Like I love Quentin Tarantino's movies, like, because there's always like those big dialogue scenes that are just impactful. And I wanted to affect that a little bit. You know, I like those types of scenes. And so that's why, you know, basically that this first comic takes place in this gritty cyberpunk subterranean bar. And there will be other, you know, in future comics, it will be a little bit more dynamic. I actually just sent, I don't know if Francisco told you about the comic Zero yet.
We were going to get there, but since you brought it up, you are doing so, and I love the fact you're doing this. You're doing a boom, taking a step back and giving us issue 0, a prequel to what we're currently seeing, which to me is, yeah, dude.
Yeah. Sometimes
you got to do that, and I think you're doing it early enough to where it will be.
Yeah. It was an idea that I had after a discussion I had with Fran, and I basically was like, all right, well, I already know where the book is going, where that storyline goes, right? So I'm going to keep that in kind of chronological order. But I did want to do a segment before the book while he's still an adult and sometime, you know, in between. And that is stuff that I don't talk about as much in the book. So anything that basically happens in the book and on is going to go forward in chronological order. And anything that happens before that is going to go backward. So it's going to be, so like the next episode after 0 going backward in chronological order will be episode 0x1 and then episode 0x2.
I love that concept, man. I really do. It's just a really dope concept because that one I haven't seen before. So it's very different and it's very unique to what you're about to do.
And that's good to know. That's so we'll basically have the timeline going in two different directions. Is basically how I thought of it.
No, that's yeah.
So yeah, and that's definitely going to require some intricate planning. But it's nothing I haven't done before at this point. It's it's the stuff I've been doing for the last 3.5 years.
So do you plan on doing the same thing with the book, or is the book just going to continue to go forward, or will you take a step back to do a book 0 too? That kind of encompasses this, like the entire 0x1 type of feel.
So one of the things that I have contemplated is offshoot series, which it's very early to be contemplating anything like that when I still have 5.5 books to write. Basically, I'm about halfway through book 2 now. I actually just finished another chapter today. So what I think I'm going to do is I'd like to have a couple of different characters in the focus for like an offshoot series following their origin story. And then I know you read the history portion of it, which was at the very beginning, where I explained how we basically got there. Well, in that history section, I described the 100 Years' War, which is basically the war over planet Diorum, which is the closest habitable planet to the source of Vitalerium, which I do want to talk about more, because I feel like I don't talk about that enough, what Vitalerium is. But
because you touched on it in the beginning of the book.
Yes.
And we know it's an energy source that was discovered by a probe that NASA sent out. And then the probe got lost, or it just kind of disappeared for 30 years, I think is in the book.
Yes.
And then it magically one day crash lands in Egypt, which I thought was cool, but that's me. And then it has this power source just kind of like lodged into it.
Yep.
Which again, really dope. That just genius, dude. And then it kicks off the story basically from there.
Right. And I definitely want to do a series on that war that ends up getting fought over Vitalerium, because I feel like that would be an awesome that could be another really fun story to follow. And once again, that would be 6 planets, each with their own, special characters, different factions within the government that are kind of going back and forth, making deals, breaking alliances, things like that. But it's all for Vitalerium, man. And I described Vitalerium as basically like a blue crystalline element. It emits this strange kind of ominous blue glow, and it almost looks like there's smoke kind of swirling within the translucent, casing of the element. And it doesn't just act as the fuel source, but it's also the mechanism by which we achieve true faster than light travel, so to speak. Now, technically you cannot travel faster than light, but it has basically, the idea is that if you apply the right force to this element, it creates a field around it that essentially allows it to bend space-time and basically shorten space, so that someone can travel and basically negate the laws of relativity in terms of it would take how long for us to travel 1 light year, and just the time differentiation that is I guess involved in like traveling long distance like that at those speeds. Time passes differently for you. Like you're traveling at that speed for 2 years, but like 50 years has passed back on Earth. It's something that I wanted to, and part of it is like my own like desire to be able to go out there and explore space. But I don't know if I'm going to live to that. So I just figured I'd build a world where I could create a plausible scenario that is based in some, modern physics theory. I mean, I based this kind of mechanism on the Alcubierre drive, that was Miguel Alcubierre, is a physicist who basically, he's the one who basically came up with the theory of a warp drive.
No,
like a working theory of a warp drive.
Growing up watching Star Wars and Star Trek, that's kind of like always the dream in the back of your head, like that would be so cool,
Exactly. And that's, so this was me kind of finding a way to fulfill my own fantasies a little bit. But like I said, Vitalerium is so important because it's not just the power source, it's the mechanism by which interstellar travel is made widely available for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned in the beginning there when it's discovered that a small piece has enabled time travel that way, or not time travel, but interstellar space travel.
Yeah,
is the word.
I think because I know exactly the part you're talking about. So the way I described it was basically a chunk of Vitalerium the size of your fist could be used to power a spacefaring vessel that's the size of a football field.
Yes, dude, that's like the exact line. How'd you do that?
Yes,
I mean, you wrote the book, but still, just to be able to recall the entire. And I just read it like yesterday, and I'm like, oh damn, he just almost quoted that word for word.
Well, I went through a pretty rigorous editing process. So I went through 2 rounds of editing and 4 rounds of proofreading. And that was after I did my own first round of proofreading before submitting it to publishers. So I almost got to a point where I was like, man, if I have to read my own book again, like I'm
yes.
Yeah, but yeah, that's when you've put this much effort into kind of creating something like this, it tends to stick with you. I've noticed.
So, I mean, we're basic. Like I wrote this nice long, well, not nice long, list of questions, and like no shit. As we're sitting here having this conversation, you're kind of answering them as we go. It's just like we're leading each other into the next one. But I'll ask you this. You said that you're talking to different people at cons and stuff like that. Who are some of the artists or writers that you have talked to and kind of like pulled you in a little bit and said, hey, here's some good advice? Like, who are some of the ones that you have spoken to?
So I've spoken to a couple of them. So there's a guy named Bodan, Sarah oh man, I don't want to butcher his last name.
I butcher last names left and right, man.
But yeah. But I'll find it for you in a minute. But he's definitely someone. He's got a number of comics. Martin from Cosmic Times. He's been very helpful. He's local to the South Florida area.
Okay.
A lot of people in the South Florida area have been very gracious and very open with it's a really cool community, man, because if you just ask, I mean, people are happy to share information with you. It's very much like it's a feast mentality, not a famine mentality. Like, oh, hey, I did this and this worked for me. Like, you should do that too. Like,
as I've gotten back into comic books and doing this weekly comic book show where I drop my recommendations, as I posted different covers and the short vids and stuff like that, and I tag the artists and the writers, the guys who do the lettering, because to me, lettering is one of the, you can have the sexiest comic book in the world, but if the lettering is all over the place and hot garbage, it just killed the whole book, So yeah. I show them appreciation by tagging them in my post, and you'd be surprised at how many reach out and just go, hey, dude, I'm glad you enjoyed, this. He's like, I'm just a letterer. We don't get a lot of people who reach out. I'm like, dude, lettering makes the book, Yeah. It's all about placement. Like, are you really going to stick that box over that dude's face? Come on. And I've seen it. You know,
it's important, which is why I have so much respect for the guys who are doing it right. Like I can't tell you how thankful I am that I found Francisco and Chandran.
Nathan Zerdy lives down there. He's down in your area.
What's that?
Nathan Zerdy.
I don't know him.
He does covers for. He does a lot of covers for DC and a few others. Like he's really, like, in the last like 2 years, he's all over the place doing some really, really nice covers.
I'll have to keep an eye out for him.
But I do think he's down in the Tampa area, so
he'll probably be at Tampa Bay Comic-Con, which I'm going to. So I'm definitely
more than likely. Yep.
Yeah. Nathan Zerdy, you said, right?
Yep. Szerdy.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I'll keep an eye out for him.
So is Francisco doing your covers as well? Is he just doing your art?
He does my covers as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I bring up the cover?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get this to work.
I always like to hear other people's feedback on it too. I want to hear what's cool, what works, what you like, what stands out, all that kind of stuff.
Here we go. Okay, of course, it's just going to bring, you know what? It's irritating. Because now I got to figure out what page it's on. Here we go.
Hey, there it is.
There it is. I hate the fact that it came up this way. Thought I had it pulled up separately already, but I guess not. But that's it. Really, really dope cover. I mean, as soon as you see the cover, you have these full cyberpunk vibes. And the dude just looks like a complete badass walking through the middle of town. With the gun on his back. That says hard ass. Everything about it.
Yeah, and you can tell in the comic that he really doesn't give a shit.
The very first book, I will attest, the very first book says he doesn't give a shit.
Yeah. He doesn't have time for this shit.
He literally told a guy he was going to blow his finger off and feed it to him. And he did it.
Yeah, that's I saw that cover when it first, basically when it was in black and white form, and I was like, oh, this is exactly what I was looking for. I've got a good, like I said, kind of working relationship now at this point with my illustrator and my colorist, to the point where I feel like I can explain things to them on like a fairly cursory level, and they know exactly what I'm going for. It's like they're pulling it out of my brain now at this point with the help of the script. And they've done just an amazing job. So
would you be okay if I scrolled a couple of pages?
Yeah, you can scroll a couple.
I don't want to give a whole lot away, because I do honestly want people to go and actually purchase the book and read the book, because I thought it was fantastic. And but I just wanted to give people that idea, that cyberpunk / Borderlands type of feel that you get, like right there. That's like Borderlands. Everything about that screams Borderlands, the video game.
It's funny you say that, because I was trying to find a way to relay like what I wanted at the beginning. And I listened to, I don't know what kind of music you're into, but I listened to like a lot of metalcore, like dark electronic. And this is all the stuff that I was listening to.
That's my gym music. That's my go-to gym music, is that right there.
Hell yeah, man. And
then I'll listen to Taylor Swift in the car. I have no shame. I will listen to Taylor Swift in the car on the drive home.
Hey, whatever gets you through traffic, buddy.
And I will sing it loud. I have no shame. With the windows down and the top off.
You got a good
Don't
voice?
care. My voice is horrible. I'm from Alabama.
Yeah, so
all right, I don't want to give too much of this away. We're going to stop sharing.
All right. It's all right. I mean, a little teaser's all right.
We'll do one more page.
We'll do one more page.
The helmet was dope. I love the concept of the helmet.
Yeah, yeah, that came out really, really cool in the comic book version. Yeah,
And I love the pops of colors. The way he did pops of colors on the suit was amazing.
Yep.
All right, we're gonna stop. We're gonna stop. I don't want to give too much away.
Well, that's like I said, I was trying to figure out a way to describe what I wanted it to look like, and I basically said I want the cyberpunk elements, but I want it to be almost geared toward like a more metal kind of future, and that was what he came back with. And I think you get to see it even more so in some of the upcoming comics, but yeah, because that is the music I literally listened to when I wrote the thing. I'd listened to, Sleep Token and Parkway Drive and like all these
guy. Yes.
Until the white noise in my ears. And then I'm just left with that feeling as I'm writing.
I know you listened to the new album.
Oh, I know. I listened to the new album.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I listened to it. I was listening to it at the gym today. Emergence is still my favorite song on that album.
I was listening to it while I was like thinking of, stuff I want to ask and do all that. So I'm very simple. I'll write out my questions and I will drop it into Chat GPT and be like, hey, clean it up for me. And Chat GPT cleans it up,
Fair enough.
And I'm like, less brain cells used that I can put forth towards something else.
There's only so much time, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I know you have Francisco on your art.
Yep.
And then you have another person doing the color. And what was his name?
Chandran Panusamy.
Oh, I'm not even going to attempt that one. My Alabama education will not allow me to butcher that. But shout out to him because the colors, amazing, amazing. So how did you get in contact with these guys? Like, how did these two individuals become your guys?
Funny enough, I kind of got lucky. I was talking to a friend who had a friend who had basically tried to create this comic website at one point. So I said, well, can you connect me with him? Because it was someone who I had met kind of in passing, at a party once or twice back in the day when I was still living in Boston. And I connected with him, hey.
Boston, that's the accent.
What's that?
That's the accent, is the Boston. Dude, you're about another half a shot away from being in full Boston.
Oh, yeah. It starts coming out after these.
Dude, that's why I quit drinking, because I would speak so Southern, nobody could understand me except my folks back home.
It's even worse when I'm around some of my friends from back that way. It's like I just fall right back into it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I go home to visit my folks for a couple of weeks. I come back to work and they're like, slow it down. What the hell are you saying? Be like, oh yeah, I just got back from Alabama. Hang on. He fits that for you.
That's the hometown resurfacing. That's what it does. But yeah, anyway, so I met up with this dude. And I said, I'm trying to get this done. Do you know any comic book artists? He said, yeah, I know this. I know a couple, but I know this one guy I used to work with. He's out of Argentina. He's fantastic. And he connected me with him. And that was Fran. That was Francisco. And then Francisco was the one who actually introduced me to Chandran, because I guess they had worked together in the past previously, because he basically said, look, I'm an illustrator at heart. Like, that's what I do best. I can do the coloring, but I know people who could really bring this to like the maximum. And that's everything that I put out. My goal is like, I want this to be the best looking thing it can possibly be.
Dude, you're nailing it.
I'm not trying to skimp on, I'm not trying to cut corners to try and make it more profitable. I'm not trying to do any of that shit. I want to make the best content possible.
So are you printing on cardstock covers and then like the normal, like really nice pages? Or are you doing like the actual paper style?
Oh, no. I'm printing it on the nice paper. I got to send you a physical copy, by the way.
I sent Eve my address. So
yeah, I'll get you a physical copy. Once the the new comic is out, I already have a Virgin variant cover planned for the first one. For the
you knew where I was going. I was walking you into it.
Oh, dude, I'm gonna have variant covers. I'm gonna have CGC graded comics. That's a new thing. I actually just opened up my artist account with
Perfect.
them.
Yep.
So I'm gonna have lots of different things available for basically anyone who wants anything.
Yeah, so when Eve contacted me, the interview that she watched was the one with I think it was Bruno, I think. And Bruno has worked with the same like couple of guys on all his books, and they're very good with colors like your guy is, because some of his books were about like in outer space as well, and the way he built the artist and the colorists and stuff did these worlds. You got to know how to do the colors, and your guy, dude,
he's the man.
Could blend the colors perfectly. And like I said, that's one of those make it or break it types of things with the lettering. When everything goes well together, it produces a good book. And your first book, top notch, up there with some of the bigger stuff that I read on a daily basis. Even though I'm an indie guy at heart, 100% indie guy, there's some guys out there that do work for Marvel and DC that, you know, Jim Lee, for instance, like to me, Jim Lee's, you know, the little Jesus of DC.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I listened to a few of your podcasts before this one. I heard that name thrown around a couple of times. Yeah.
Huge fan of him. I've been thinking about putting my comic book recommendations on Spotify and everywhere else as well.
That'd be cool.
Just to see how well they'll do. I don't really know. I normally keep it to YouTube, and then I chop it up and I share it everywhere else. But it's one of those where I'm like, you know what? I may start doing that just to see how well they'll do on the streaming side of things. But so I don't know how familiar you are with other artists and that kind of stuff. If there was an artist that you would want to work with, like if somebody just said, hey, pick your artist and you can have them, who would you go with? I know you don't want to cheat on your guy Francisco because he is amazing, but
I don't, and he's my dude for sure. I don't know. Like I said, I'm a little newer. I think I mentioned this earlier. I'm a little newer.
Yeah.
Book game, and I'm trying now to start getting it. Yeah, to start really getting into it. So I'm not as familiar with all of the names as, you know, some of the guys who have been, you know, reading comics for a while. So right now it's all about discovery for me.
Okay.
Going out there and seeing what's out there and seeing who is who. And
I may, Ghost Machine, which is a substitute of, so you have Image, who does a lot of indie publishing under their umbrella. Then you have Jeff Johns, who does Ghost Machine. They have Geiger, Junkyard Joe, the Rockefellers. They have a whole list of titles, all done by the same team of guys.
Oh, really?
And they're phenomenal work. Anything by James Tynion as well in his Tiny Onion company. They do House of Slaughter, Something is Killing the Children, Exquisite Corpses that just come out yesterday. Just so many titles I could sit here and name, but I know if I'm at the shop and it has their name on it, you're getting top-notch quality with the writing, the colors, the lettering, you name it. Those are my guys.
Right. Well, that's it, man. I wish I had my notebook with me. I'd be writing names down right now.
I can send you whatever you want. Any recommendation you want, I'll shoot them to you.
We'll talk. We'll talk for sure.
Definitely.
But yeah, so my short answer to your question is I don't know yet. I need to do some research, and I need to just explore a little bit more. And I'm going to continue that. I mean, I'm going to like 20 Comic Cons this year.
Holy shit! Oof.
Yeah, I'm not fucking. I'm trying to make waves, man.
That's a schedule.
That is a schedule for sure. And I literally just maybe February opened up my own medical device distributorship. So I'm running 2 businesses now. So it's been busy. It's been busy, but I'm still.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you had a regular 9 to 5, man.
Yeah, so I was in medical devices for like 11 years, and I was traveling all over the country. My specialty was the traumatic burn injury, which is kind of a subsect of wound healing, like advanced wound healing, and it's a very small community. But all of these burn centers, they're not just like right next to each other. I mean, they're usually they could be pulling from like a tri-state area. So I'd have to fly out to like Augusta, Georgia, or Columbus.
Beautiful area.
Or, like all over the place. So I was traveling the country. That's why I was on a plane so much. And so I had met people all over the place. And it just got to a point where I was getting kind of sick of, working the corporate 9 to 5. I didn't have as much freedom and as much time to be able to
feel it right here, man.
On this. Yeah.
I definitely feel that.
Yeah, I hear you. So I just said, you know what? I have the contacts. I know what I'm doing now. I know what the process is. I know the protocols. I can do this on my own and maybe even make more money. We'll see. We're still building the business right now, so we haven't gotten quite to that point yet, but it's going well.
Good. It's always, anytime you can take that step back and focus on something that you really want to focus on, that is still going to provide for what you're really wanting to focus on, that's always a good thing.
100%. This is me trying to write my way out of my day job eventually.
I feel it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So one day I'll get there. But right now, I'm just running around like a maniac.
That's the way to do it, though.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been a good run so far.
So when it came to like the character designs for the comic book, did you how involved were you with that? Like Roman has to look a certain way, these characters have to look a certain way, or did you go, Francisco, this is what I think, and then he just run with it?
I already had the basically all of the characters fully rendered in 3D.
Okay.
I have a phenomenal graphic designer. His name's Ahmed Guitar. He's actually in Egypt. And we
were just talking about Egypt.
I know. I want to go visit Egypt at some point, man. I got to see those pyramids.
Pyramids are on my list.
Coming out lately.
Yeah, the pyramids are definitely on my list.
Yeah. I want to get down into those caverns beneath. I want to see what's going on with those pillars.
You read the same article.
I know. Oh, there's tons of articles. It's been all over the news. But yeah, so I'd been working with this guy to get my book covers made. And so I already really had a feel for what I wanted Roman to look like. And I already had worked extensively with Ahmed to basically get it fully completed for all the characters. And I did that for a very specific reason. I mean, I'm a huge gamer. I love
Assassin's Creed.
Hell yeah.
So your book cover, I think it was your audio book cover that was sent over.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Like the moment I seen it, like, because his back is to us and it kind of looks like the snow almost. I mean, I know it's not snow, but I was like,
it's funny you draw that comparison, because it's really not what I was thinking of, but yeah, it kind of does a little bit. But yeah, I basically said, hey, I want all of these characters fully rendered in 3D, full 360-degree views, because eventually this is something I'd like to turn into a video game. So
that would be dope, actually. Yeah.
Give me a few years on that, but I promise you, if I have anything to do with it, it's going to come to fruition. But yeah, so
do you mind if I pull up the audiobook cover?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get it to come up the first try.
and the audiobook cover is the same as the regular book cover. And
Okay.
there's also the limited edition book cover, which I'm
There we go.
Oh yeah,
That gave me Assassin's Creed vibes, like hard Assassin's Creed vibes.
Yeah. Yep. And you'll actually recognize that scene later on once you get to a certain point in the book.
Okay, bet. Yeah, I'm actually, as we talk about it more, I'm like, I know what I'm doing like the rest of the weekend besides catching up on Star Wars is in between I'm reading.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it, man. But yeah, so like I said, I already had a basis for what I wanted all the characters to look like, and I basically just sent those to Fran, and I said, this is kind of the vibe I'm going for. We made some tweaks, just conversations between us. Like, I want his armor to look a little different here, a little, little small things. And
so is he wearing armor? Or is that like a full exosuit, or is he actually got biomechanical as well?
No, so he doesn't have any biomech because he's basically he can't afford it. And on planet Diorum, normal citizens are restricted to basically only medically necessary bionic implants. It's like, once again, authoritarian government, lots of restrictions, lots of regulations, and unless you're kind of some high-flying business mogul or a politician or something like that, you're not getting access to the higher end, or you're in the underworld basically paying for it under the table and getting it illegally, and
Gotcha.
That's the ball game. So that's kind of that seems to be kind of the result of these like big authoritarian like massive regulation type government. Is it always creates a space for like an underworld. Just like, I mean, anytime you have prohibition of anything, I mean, look at prohibition with alcohol here. It created a whole underworld of organized crime around alcohol as an illegal business. And so that's kind of the world that you're in. That's not a new theme either. That's what, I mean, William Gibson, who is like the father of cyberpunk, I'm actually rereading his book Neuromancer right now, which is basically the book that the cyberpunk game was based on loosely. Because like I said, he's the one who created that cyberpunk kind of feel. And he was an author. He wrote a book series. So I'm rereading those books right now, just on audiobook whenever I have a little time. But it's a gritty, dark future. And it's not pretty. You have all this technology, but it's not evenly dispersed. And it creates like these kind of pockets of crime. And it's not pretty. It's the neon lights, that whole look is basically to kind of mask the I guess the filth of the surroundings, really. That's kind of cyberpunk vibe is. And yeah, it's one that I was always fascinated with. So I wanted to affect that a little bit in my writing as well. But I also plan to explore a lot of different types of idol makeups, especially as we start to go to other planets in future books. Because once again, there are 6 other planets that have yet to be explored in the book series. So we're gonna take trips to each of those planets at some point, and we're gonna get to see what their society looks like on that planet. Like there's one planet, it's going to be basically like a complete corporatocracy, because it's called Planet Ventura, and Planet Ventura is basically completely owned and operated by 2 corporations, the Syriax Corporation and Grozix Industries. And they are going to be like kind of the main power players on that planet, and we're going to get to explore that planet a little bit. That's actually going to be a fun one to write. I've already been kind of messing around.
I'm already sold on it.
I've been messing around with a little bit of a chapter breakdown on that one already, and I have one of the characters modeled after one of my good friends, John Alvarez, and he's going to be a wild trip of a character. He's
Dude,
an interesting.
That's the great thing about having your own world within this book is you can just be like, hey, my friend John over here, he'd be perfect for this one character, and that's kind of like the character you put in is like you pull pieces from him and go, yep, that's perfect.
You know, it's funny. I basically jumped into this knowing nothing about the writing world, the comic book world. Like this was a completely like 180-degree turn from what I was doing on a daily basis. And the thing I'd always heard was, write what you know, right? And I was like, well,
yep.
I know these people. And so I started this practice of kind of basing a lot of the characters in the book on people that I knew, because it allowed me to kind of breathe life into that character. And it allowed me to write from that character's perspective more effectively, because I was like, oh, well, that's based on this person. I know what they would do in that scenario. And let's see where that takes us. And I try and keep the writing fluid because it allows me to keep the character interactions and basically the storyline feeling more real. Nothing feels forced. At least my goal is to have nothing feel forced.
From what I've read, like I said, I just started digging into the book. I love the flow of it. Like I said, the way you start it with introducing the different factions, and then you start into Roman's backstory. It all just kind of like it's dude, it's everything you want. There's not been a single point where it's like you're here. Oh wait, we're over here. You're like, wait, how did I get over there? And that's one of the things about some books that will drive you crazy is you're here, but then all of a sudden you're like, boop.
Yeah.
And then you're back and you're like, wait, no, what? No, what's going on right now? And then they'll do it throughout the book. And sometimes you can make it make sense. But for the most part, when it just jumps oddly, like, no.
Yeah.
Like, who approved this?
Yeah. Well, thankfully, I went through all those rounds of editing. So hopefully all that stuff got scrapped early on. But I have major events. And thank you for the kind words, by the way. I couldn't be happier to hear that.
I wouldn't BS you on that one. That's genuine from me. From what I've gotten to enjoy of it, I've thoroughly enjoyed of it from the comic book, and then starting to dig into the book. Yeah, that's what I look for.
Hell yeah, man. Well,
I like, and it's not an overly complicated book. You're not trying hard to put big words in places where big words don't belong, outside of trying to pronounce it. Right. But once you have it in your head, you're like, okay, that's pretty easy, right? But I was like, I like books that flow well. They're easy to read. The writer didn't try to confuse his readers by throwing in like big made up words. Like, why?
Like I feel like some people can get obsessed with trying to sound like they're smart by trying to, and that's not the purpose of, especially in any kind of fiction. Like it's for enjoyment, right? You gotta
entertain me.
It's entertainment.
Entertain me with the words.
Yeah.
I know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm sorry.
From a creative process, what has been like the one thing that you've enjoyed the most? The writing, editing, design, collaborating, building this amazing world that you're building. What has been your favorite part so far of this process?
Probably the world building and the character building has been the most.
How
fun.
Big is that spreadsheet, by the way?
Like 40 fucking tabs, dude. It's not. I had to. I had to create a religion in the book. What does religion look like 700 years from now? So I had to write out the tenets of this religion so that I could, put that into their faction and everything else. And everything from A to Z, I've tried to think.
And I'm pretty sure it's still growing.
It's still literally weekly. It grows. I'm changing things, adding things.
How's your computer set up? Like, do you have the big screen and then another big screen over here and then another screen over here?
I got a big old widescreen. I can't even show you with my, I usually have like multiple different things open. So I'll have a spreadsheet open on one side and I'll have my, the page in the center that I'm writing, the Word document.
Yeah.
And have, like a thesaurus tab open just in case I feel like I'm using words too frequently. And that's it. That's typically my writing process, unless I'm on the plane, and then it's just I don't have that. I actually, it's nice to be writing on the plane is nice because I disconnect.
Yeah.
Have any of the distractions. I don't go, oh, did they email me back? Let me check. No, I've got
just the music and the writing.
Yes, exactly. And that's probably why the writing portion of the first book went probably a little faster, but it was the world building part because I hadn't built it yet at that point. That contributed to basically it taking 2 years to get the first novel completed.
That's still a really good time to crank a book out and build a world around it.
Yeah. It's because it's not a shorty. It's not a shorty, but it reads fast.
Your book though is like the perfect amount of pages though. It's not obsessive. It's not short. It's not like, why is there 1,000 pages in this book?
Right.
It's perfect. Like that. I think it was like 536 I seen, or 586, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, that's like, to me, that's like the perfect amount of pages,
Yeah. Solid number.
It really is. It's like you pick a number and you're like 500. Oh, it's 536, but I was close.
Exactly. So yeah. So I forgot what we were talking about. What were we talking about?
Oh, we were just like your favorite part of the book.
Yeah. Definitely like I said, getting to ask questions like, what, all right, let's say one planet. I have one planet that's going to be like a water planet.
You got to have a water planet.
You can't not. You got to have a water planet. And it started to get me thinking like, all right, what are the cities going to look like in this water planet? What are the creatures that they're going to find? What are their exports? Well, it's a water planet, so water is going to be one. And probably, fishing industry and the things like that. All these different things. And then what are some of their energy sources going to look like? Because even though Vitalerium is used as kind of the major energy source, it's kind of like the fossil fuels of today. I want there to be, that's kind of a one-dimensional look at, a real type of society. There's going to be all sorts of different types of energy sources. So I found this recently where it was it was not a theory, but it was like a schematic for a potential power source that was basically powered by wave movement. And it's basically like these panels
from Japan.
Yeah. And it's put on the water, and every time they're just constantly going like this with the waves, and it's creating energy. And I was like, I'm gonna cover.
They're actually using one of those in Japan right now.
Oh,
it's a full prototype built already in Japan, and it's actually operational.
Perfect. We're gonna have an updated version of those on that planet. We're gonna have all sorts of stuff, fun stuff like that. When I'm literally like, I always liked. Do you remember like SimCity and like or even just like The Sims? The mode where you're like building all the stuff. That was my favorite part of those video games because I was like, oh, I get to decide how this goes and where this goes. I would do that for hours and hours. I would forget all about the other portions of the game. I'd find the cheat code so I could just jack up my cash supply so I could just build the craziest thing I could possibly, fathom.
Asking mom in the grocery store for a pin so you can write down the cheat codes from the Game Informer.
Yeah. Nice. That was a good move. I should have taken that move. But what was it for The Sims? It was Rosebud. Rosebud,
yep.
Colon, semicolon, colon. Yeah.
Yep. I remember that one.
Yep. But anyway, yeah, the building portion has always been like, since I was a kid, that seemed to manifest in obviously that kind of rudimentary way. But like here now, I get to really just free reign over what I get to build, and I fucking love that, man. There's something that's about that.
So, were you ever on the plane and just leaned over to the person that's seat next to you and like turned your computer and be like, "Hey, can you read this? Does it make sense?" Did you ever do that?
No, I never did that. I've had some people, like as I'm kind of typing away with my headphones in, like nudge me and be like, "What's this you're working on?" Because they probably saw me start a new chapter or something, 14, and then start typing. They're like, "Hey, what's this you're writing?" So I've had some conversations with people about it, but I'm relatively protective over the kind of the alpha version of the.
No, as you should be.
And just because I don't, it's not ready. The first draft of everything is shit, and I forget who said that. It was someone prominent, but
somebody important said it.
Yeah, but that's my point. Like I try not to show it to anyone until I feel like I'm comfortable with it, and I have a high standard in terms of comfort. I'm a little perfectionist when it comes to that. So, like, even my wife, who is probably, she's usually my first beta reader and probably my toughest,
biggest artist critic. Yeah.
Not afraid to tell me if something reads like shit, and she'll tell me just like that.
She's a keeper.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she's great. No. I mean, you need things. You need that, right?
You need honesty. You really do.
And the honesty is good, and I appreciate that from her. And she's awesome. She's a rock star. But she I didn't give her any of my chapters until I had got more than halfway through the first book. And I write a chapter, I start the next chapter, I'll write the first paragraph, and then I leave it. And then I'll go back and edit the first chapter.
Okay.
And once that's fully edited, and I basically have I've had time to sit on how I started the chapter, then I go back to that chapter. And sometimes I'm like, I like the way I started that. That's the way that it's going to flow best. And then other times I'm like, actually, I want to start this chapter this way. And I change it. Or maybe I move what I wrote down further, or I cut things around a little bit. And
get ahead of yourself a little bit and have to pull it back.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly. So and that happens when you're kind of collecting. You're basically collecting your thoughts as you're writing to put them on the page. So, and that's why when you first write something, it's probably not the best it could be. You need time to be able to go through it. So at that point, I had already edited those chapters probably twice through, and I got to a point where I was like, all right, I'll share this with you, and she read it and she was like, oh, you could actually you could write. I was like, yeah, thanks. Thanks.
No, that's something like my wife will watch me build something or watch me tear apart something and put it back together. And she's like, oh, you actually know how to do that.
Yeah.
Like, did you doubt me? Like, come on. I said I could do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with a comic book, how far do you see it? Like, how many issues do you see with the prequels and potentially spinoffs? Like, do you see it being very much like the book, like covering all 7 books as well, plus prequels?
Oh
Well,
yeah.
how big do you see the comic book itself getting?
I'm gonna keep making them for as long as I'm writing the books. And like I said, that comic book that you have, that first issue, is just one chapter from the first book.
Yeah, you said chapter 6, correct?
Chapter 6.
Yeah.
The first book is 31 chapters. So I have, and then I've got 6 more books after that.
And that's a daunting task on how, like, which chapters do you want to pull and make into a comic? Because you can't do them all.
Yeah, you're probably right. But
because I mean, you can kind of take, okay, I like this part of this one book that goes into this chapter and this chapter kind of go hand in hand. So I can kind of split and do a 24 page book or comic book or 32 page comic book. Because the more pages you get, the more expensive things get when it comes to printing, stapling. It can get messy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's ways to do it. And that was my curiosity is like, are you going to attempt to do that? Because I mean, that's 31 comic book issues plus the prequels just from one book alone.
So here's how I'm doing it, and that's a good point. So yeah, some chapters probably aren't going to translate well, or maybe parts of some chapters could be taken, and like for instance, the next one that's about to come out is a combination of 2 chapters. And okay. I took kind of the best, most kind of, I guess, the most interesting parts of both and was able to kind of combine them. And so, yeah, so it's not going to be a perfect one-to-one, like I mentioned before. But as far as what's happening, that's going to stay relatively true.
Yeah.
At least for now. Because right now what's going to happen is the comic book as it stands is going to follow only the protagonist. However, okay. The book is multi-narrative, so you are going to end up following other characters who you'll meet later on in the book. And what I plan to do is I plan to do all of Romans, and then I plan to basically start doing some of the other characters and have meet him, and then be able to maybe even go back a little further and explore some of their backstory that I don't include in the book. And
I don't know if you're familiar with Spawn, right?
Oh,
like the movie from Todd McFarlane in the 90s. So
I know Spawn.
We're 300 plus issues deep into the comic book right now. And what he's done the last 2 years is some of the characters that he introduced new things to us finally. So we got the Scorched, which is a team of Spawns. We got Gunslinger Spawn, Medieval Spawn just came out. We have the Book of Knits, which is someone who's helped him before in the past. She's been an enemy, she's been a friend. And he just recently did The Violator, which got a 7-book spinoff. So they went back and kind of told a history story of like different cultural and world events that the Violator caused, like the plague in Europe. You know what I'm saying? That is a dope concept to grasp into and go, hey, I'm going to go and do this 5-issue character spinoff for this one particular character. And that's kind of what Todd McFarlane, the team over at Image and the Spawn universe is currently doing right now. And I love that concept. So just tossing one up for you.
Yeah. Hey,
it's a dope concept to explore.
And I definitely want to do something like that. Because like I said, I want to make this immersive. I want to make it expansive. I want this to be something people can sink their teeth into. And this is, even though we're kind of at the ground floor, like I want anyone who's out there who's maybe looking for something new or looking to check out some cool sci-fi stuff, like I'm not stopping anytime soon. I've got a lot of big plans for this, and I'm going to keep going. And even if I have to finance, all of it.
That leads to my next question is, how are you currently financing the comic book version of this?
Just myself.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah. So
I didn't know if you were using Kickstarter or something like that to.
Haven't yet. I've been toying around with the idea of doing a Kickstarter for some of
If you ever want to do one, let me know. I know a guy who wrote a whole basic how-to guide on how to run a Kickstarter campaign.
Okay.
It's really good. I've read through it, even though I don't have a plan to do a Kickstarter anytime soon. But he sent it to me out of the goodness of his heart. Said, hey, if anybody ever wants to know how I did this and my lessons learned, you can pass this to them. So shout out to Bruno Caterino, who I've had the pleasure of talking to twice now, who's both his books got funded recently, which I thought was really dope. I'm always happy to see people who come on succeed, because that's ultimately at the end of the day what I want to see is them succeed.
Right.
And I got to play my tiny part in that. You know, that's, you know, you always celebrate your friends' successes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
I 100%.
If you're ever interested in it, I can shoot that over to you. That's not an issue. I could even put you in contact with Bruno and he could send it to you and you could ask him questions if you ever wanted to.
I'd be interested in something like that. I like this journey has taken me down kind of like a whole new world where I'm just like, I'm more interested now than I ever have been in like learning new skills and like learning how different things work. And it's ignited like this new passion for learning and exploration. And,
listening to you talk about it, you can feel that, you know?
Yeah.
Like you can tell how passionate you are about what it is that you're doing and what you're trying to give to people. And it to me, it shows in the work as well. So hats off to you because you're nailing it and you can feel that. Thanks,
man. Appreciate it. Appreciate that. Yeah. I just, I don't know, man. I'm basically just kind of learning on the fly as I'm doing everything now with this, and it's a free. There's definitely a freedom to it. It's definitely freeing in some aspects, and it's kind of scary in others. Like, you know, I don't know what that.
I couldn't imagine like kind of like you stepped away from your 9 to 5, you started your own company, 2 of them,
yeah,
and then you're like, hey, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to spin that off into this big world. And we're also going to have comic books. And dude, that's like, I don't even know how to describe that. Like, that's a leap of faith if I've ever seen one, dude. And putting the faith in what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's the Jesus take the wheel moment for sure.
That's it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, man. I'm just, like I said, I feel like, as you know, part of me wants to say like, oh man, I hope it works out. But then the other part, there's like a part of me that's like, just focus on the content, just focus on the body of work. Like you have so much planned, like you have so many things. If you can just focus on making sure that you bring it to fruition in the best possible form that it could be, it'll work out. And
one piece at a time. That's all you can do.
Exactly. So I'm gonna keep grinding away.
A couple of more for you. Looking back, is there anything that you've learned during this project that made you kind of change how you think about storytelling as a whole?
About storytelling as a whole. I've definitely learned, I feel like, what works and what doesn't work. Mostly through my beta readers. They've been immensely helpful. Just making sure that I have, and my editor, my editor, John Smith, most generic name in the world, but great guy. He's a professor up in, I forget where, but that was a very collaborative scenario. And one of the things that he told me was like, he's like, you've got this big story in your head. And when I gave him the book, it had already been through a few of my beta readers, my own, you know, perfectionist bullshit. And he was like, I see this as like basically 90% done. And I was like, all right, well, that's good to hear. It was not what I was expecting, because I had been basically, you know, I'd heard horror stories of like, you got to change this, you got to change that, you got to, and it wasn't that at all. He could tell I kind of came to the table prepared, and he was like, look, some parts need more elaboration and some parts you're just a little too wordy. And for me, like I'd say the biggest thing for me was especially in the book, like I probably cut off about 50 pages.
Okay.
You know, throughout the editing process, which was mostly just me cutting down the wordiness of certain areas, because my goal with this was to try and put you in the front seat so that you could see everything that was going on with the characters in every single scenario. Almost like I wanted it to be almost like a cinematic event through text, right?
Oh, yeah. No, once I got to where we started learning about young Roman, you get that feel from it, though. So you accomplished that wholeheartedly.
That's good to hear, because that's
you layer details with the story, and you can almost in your head you're reading, but your brain is playing it for you. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. No, you nailed that. You definitely nailed that.
That's good to hear. And yeah, just making sure that, and a lot of times it's just kind of like tedious tweaks and things like that. Like I could, you know, shorten it by, you know, just rewording it this way and that kind of stuff. That was definitely my one biggest flaw when I was first writing. And then there were other parts where, you know, it's all up here. Like I know exactly what I want to portray. I know exactly what's going on in the scene. I know.
Do you already have your ending planned?
Oh, what's that?
Do you have your ending planned?
My ending? Oh, my ending. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
like book 7, you know exactly how you want the story to close.
I know exactly how it ends.
Because other writers I've talked to, whether it's a comic book artist or just people that I've met at cons who write, you know, sci-fi novels and that kind of stuff, they're like, oh, I wrote my ending. That last chapter of that book was done before I even got into the beginning, because that's what come to me first is how cool would a book be if it ended this way? And I wrote that, and then I went back and wrote the rest. I was like, dude, that's insane to me. But I get it. Yeah. Because you want that perfect ending. And I know a lot of people are like, if you're writing something, you know where you want to take it and how you want to end it. It's just getting to that point.
Exactly. Like I said, remember when I said I like to keep the writing fluid?
Yes.
There are certain things that are hardwired. Like, for instance, the first 2 books are going to be on a planetary basis, happening on planet Diorum. The next set of books are going to happen on a galactic basis, so with all of the different colonized planets, which is going to be fun because we're going to explore some other planets. And then in the third segment, we're going to start getting weird. And I already know exactly how I want it to end.
I love weird.
Aside from small details that may shift and change throughout, but everything else in between, I try and keep it fluid, but keep it moving toward those major events.
So I'm guessing you already have it like stacked and laid out on book 2. I need X, Y, and Z to happen. Book 3, ABC will happen, and so forth and so on. There's certain events that have to happen in certain books, and you're just kind of like writing the details of those events to get there.
I'm connecting the dots essentially. So yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said, kind of.
That's exactly what you said.
you read my mind. It was a picture book.
Yeah. And so I know how it ends, and like I said, I've always enjoyed like philosophy, and especially the philosophy of like advanced civilization, and you know, as things begin to expand and what happens. And I love sci-fi for the fact that it allows us to explore like potential ways that we could fuck it up, but also because
it's a guarantee we're going to do that.
Yeah, and it's like it's a good way for us to identify pitfalls, you know, as a society. Like there's value to sci-fi in that respect. And then it also allows us to come up with potential solutions or ways to frame a solution, just different mindsets that could, you know, help us get through certain hardships. And I love doing that. And so I wanted the ending to be very meaningful. And so we're going to explore a lot of things in this series arc. We're going to explore, I'm going to try to explore the crux at which simulation theory, the Big Bang theory, religion, and kind of like a theory of everything meet.
Okay.
So that's where it's not going to be like overt. It's going to be more so like kind of in the subtext, but all of the different theories, just a way that they kind of coincide into one.
Okay. So let me ask this. I know in the first issue of the comic book, Roman was out getting an artifact. Is that going to be a common theme throughout the comic book in the actual story, the book?
There, it's an important detail. You'll see more
Okay.
instances of that. It's not going to be all him. Kind of one of the things about Roman is that he's especially skilled in, you know, knowledge of the untamed wilderness of Dioram, just kind of the jungles, the forests, mountainous regions, the desert regions. I have the whole planet mapped out. Essentially, he has these like weird kind of like savant elements where he's just like, oh, that's that creature. This is how you do, you know,
okay.
Creature. This is it. Because one of the things that you find out in the first chapter is his father used to quiz him on the Fauna Dioram books, which is all like the animals of the planet and like all the different things. So, and it's a cutthroat kind of planet in terms of the species that exist there. I mean, there are fucking monsters on this planet.
Nice.
So there are elements of that certainly kind of scattered throughout. And I part of that, I definitely think I pull from my love for the Witcher series. I am a huge fan of that. And
dude.
and
yes.
This is what do you play video games?
I do. When I have opportunities, I sneak in and get me a game in for a couple hours. So
this is like if you took Mass Effect, Cyberpunk, and The Witcher, and you mashed them together. That's the kind of game that this would be like, and that's exactly what I want this to feel like, even when you're just reading it. That's kind of where I guess a little bit of my inspiration came from. But
I mean, that's three classics right there, and they're all one of those games where you can just go back and just play it.
Yeah, 100%. I love those. I love a game with a good campaign storyline, like a really good.
Yes.
I love going on and like put me on the road for a fucking adventure. Like that's what.
I will play story mode all day on stuff like everybody's running around GTA, you know, just killing the NPCs. I'm like, nah, dude, I'm in the story mode.
Yeah.
I'm playing the story through, and then I'm going to go have the fun and run over people and do all that stuff. But the story's got to be complete.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I'm the same way. I love the story. And I feel like I also love games where you get like an option to kind of choose, or you get the opportunity to make choices within the game that have an actual effect on the outcome of things.
Have effect later on in the game. Yep.
Yeah, I think that adds a nice element because there's value to your autonomy there, right? And I think that's definitely a cool.
Far Cry was really good at that.
Far Cry. I haven't played the last two Far Cries. So, oh no.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Oh, okay.
They how do I say it? What they had in part 3, I think, was perfect. But then with 4 and 5, I think it's 4 and 5, they kept adding more and more and more and more. And then you would spend like hours trying to kill, some animals that are hard to find,
Yeah.
just to be able to upgrade your equipment to where you needed to be to go into this last mission.
Yeah.
And it got really bad like that. And then you could talk to animals, and it got way too much. Like it got really weird, and it just became way too much and overbearing to where the story was good, but it wasn't enjoyable because of all the shit you had to do.
Yeah.
So you could skip the last couple.
All right, fair enough. The one I'm still playing right now, which I only play very sporadically because I don't have any fucking time anymore, is I've been playing Starfield.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. That's been a fun one. I love a sci-fi game. Yeah, I mean, I love sci-fi in general, man. Ever since I was a kid, just anything sci-fi. The first sci-fi game I actually ever really got into was a game called Freelancer. It was a
Okay.
PC, it was an old one. And
Okay, yeah.
My father, this is back when I was in like middle school. My father was the one who basically bought the game because he was a police officer and he retired after 23 years. And, he had all this free time. So he was either, bothering me at track practice, or he was, finding other stuff to do. So he started getting into video games. He started buying like nice systems and things like that. And he wasn't particularly tech savvy. So
Yeah.
he'd have me play with him. And in this game, Freelancer, you're flying a spaceship around, basically doing contract work. And he could never find the button for the missile or for the nanobots to repair the ship. So we'd be playing together and he'd be like, all right, nanobots. So I'd hit the nanobot and then missile, we need the missile.
Randy, you got some great bonding time with your father,
Yeah. So that was kind of a fun thing. And then I started playing it myself and I was way better than him. And but that was kind of what really got me started. That and XCOM. XCOM was
Yeah.
The XCOM games were dope.
All right. Nick, I'd love to continue all night, but let's bring it home. Let's give a fun one to the people. What are you reading or watching right now? I know you said you're reading something right now, but are you having time to actually sit down with the wife, watch some TV? What are you watching?
We're watching the show on it was a show that she found, and I think it's called The Terror.
I've heard of that.
It's about this. I'm kind of I nerd out with conspiracy theories a little bit. So there's a
comic book called The Department of Truth.
What's that?
The Department of Truth.
What's that?
It's a comic book, The Department of Truth.
Yeah.
If you love conspiracies, go pick up the trade paperback of like 1 through 5 and give it a read. You'll love it.
I'll check that out for sure. But yeah, so I like that stuff, not in a crazy way, but more in like some of this might be true way, and some of this is and then this show is about this ship in like I think like the 1700s or something like that, as they're crossing through the Arctic, and they get stuck in the Arctic trying to find this pass, and all this weird stuff starts happening. So I love, and I've always been like, I've gone down, some rabbit holes with the poles and everything like that, and the research facilities in Antarctica and all that stuff, and that's it. So this was immediately I was like, all right, this one I'll watch with you. So we've been watching that, and that's been fun. I like anything horror. Like I love that. There are some cosmic horror elements to the book too. I forgot to mention that, but you probably haven't come across that yet. But
CJ, who was on here earlier, giving you the shout out on the 7-book deal. Big horror guy. Like that's what he does. That's his neck of the woods, and I'll let him know, like, hey, you need to pick this up too, because it's got horror elements mixed into it as well, especially on the sci-fi side. I love sci-fi horror. Aliens. Yeah. The new Predator about to come out. It's going to be a good 2025 for that kind of stuff.
It's a good year for sci-fi all around.
It really is. So let's close it out, man. Tell everybody where they can find you at.
Absolutely.
And how they can connect with you.
So you can get the book on Amazon. The audio book is on Audible. It's called Vitalerium: Descent into the Void. You can find me on my website, Vitalerium. That's Vitalerium series.com. That's where you can get the comic books, the limited edition books, any of the limited edition stuff, merch. I'm on social media, basically every social media that exists, at Vitalerium Series. And I have a Patreon called Inside Vitalerium, where once again, you get inside access to the whole creation process, limited edition stuff. You get early access to everything, including the books and the comic books. And yeah, thank you everyone for their support.
Sounds great. So when you have a chance, if you could shoot me all that stuff, that way when I push this out to Spotify and then I put it out on YouTube again, if you can include all those, shoot me an email with those links in it. I will make sure all that's included and how they can find you on across everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send you.
I'll make sure everybody has access to the link. And but with that, everybody, we're going to close it out. If you came out and rocked with us for a little bit, we appreciate you stopping in. This show will go live next Wednesday on YouTube, Spotify, you name it. They'll get it. I'll have all the links that Nick just mentioned below the description on YouTube. As always, Nick, welcome to the Council of Nerds. And Vitalerium is USDN approved.
It's a trap!